buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Well, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. It is the Michael Dukes Show. Hello and good morning to you, my friends. Hello. Tuesday, just another beautiful day in paradise. The sunlight is creeping out and feeling pretty good about it. My daughter found her shoe last night. It's been missing for 2 months. It was out on the lawn. She chased the dog one night and lost her shoe and then could not find it. And lo and behold, there it was. That's the kind of stuff you find in spring around here in Alaska. That's where it just kind of pops up out of the stuff. It was she's like, oh, there it is. I see it now. Anyway, it's Tuesday, and that means a couple things. First and foremost, it means that Tuesday is the day we're going to be jumping into it with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, who comes on board to share with us the weekly top three. That is the top three items that he believes are important for us to pay attention to and be watching out for. That's going to be today's topics. So we got today's topics include, and I quote, today's three topics are Dunleavy's talk of balance. What is the true goal of the top 20%? And that's really to make government grow and more. And then the critical question about oil taxes that no one is asking yet. And we'll be talking with Brad about that here in just a few moments as we pick things up with him after the first break mark here this morning. We'll be talking with him. And then in hour two, we'll be getting our betterment section done. That is our weekly PMA and life coaching lesson from our friend Chris Story, the man from Homer, who comes on board to chat with us about again, positive things, getting your mind right, all the other things that we've got going on. It's a good day. It's a good day. It's been a good week so far. I hate to get too far ahead of myself, but I'm feeling like May may be the turnaround. Maybe I just needed a little, because 2023 has been a little rough for many folks. In my circle of influence and beyond. And I'm hoping that the 1st of May marks a turnaround for a little bit more positive year this far. So it's a hope anyway, right? That's the mantra that I'm working under right now. All right. So we got a few headlines that we're going to get into here and see what's going on. We'll also talk about some of the, I guess I could run through real quick because here we are, day 15, right? Day 15 of the, on the countdown, 15 days left of the potential session. That's all we've got going on right now. So what are we going to be looking at today in the legislature? Public testimony opportunities today. Well, today's pretty busy. But it all starts this afternoon at 1 p.m. in the House Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. HB 158 is going to be heard. It's a bill about the military and the Space Force. And then at 1:30 in House Finance, Kevin McCabe's HB 3 bill The gold and silver specie as legal tender bill is going to be up for public testimony. At same time in House Finance, in that same hearing, Citizens Advisory Committee on Federal Areas, HB 83, will be heard. At 1:30, again the same time, in Senate Transportation, there's a bill related to taxation on rental vehicles, SB 127, which, again, I don't know anything about that one. The House State Affairs has got the HB 4 at 3 p.m., and that's the repeal the ranked choice voting open primary bill, which fingers crossed that actually goes somewhere. I guess we'll see what happens with that. At 3:30 in Senate Health and Social Services is HB 60, which is a bill about runaways, Department of Health duties, licensing, and info. At 3:30 in State Senate Affairs is elections and voter registration campaigns, as well as license plates and specialty organizations. This is about new license plates for specialty orgs or some of those custom license plates for entities. And then they're also going to be dealing with electric assisted bikes, HB 8. Electric assisted, hey, okay. And then they're also going to be talking about SB 61, which is the U.S. president election, the presidential election, and dealing with a popular vote compact, which, from what I understand, and I've heard a few things about this bill, it's a little troubling to me. There's been a big push across the country to do away with the Electoral College, and they want to elect president by popular vote versus the Electoral College, which is a huge mistake. We've actually talked about this here on the program. The founders were pretty smart, and the Electoral College is a buffer against mob rule. That's what it is. It's fractional, it's fractional representation, so that it allows that areas in the rural sides of the communities are not overwhelmed by the big mega, metropolis cores of these big major cities. You get these red states with a blue capital, and it's a problem, right? That's what majority rule and what the popular vote thing is all about. They put the Electoral College in for a reason, and it is to protect the rights of some of the lower population areas in the states, but they don't like that. They don't like that at all. So there's been some discussion on how to fix that and what to change. It is an act relating to an interstate compact to elect president and vice president of the U.S. by national popular vote, and relating to the section of electors for candidates and duties of those electors. So this is from Wielkowski and L.V. Gray Jackson. And it's a problem. It is a problem. If you want all your major metropolitan cities to be the ones that basically elect the president and the vice president, then this is the one for you. If that's all you want, is the major urban areas to basically overrun the rural areas, this is a bill that you want to be voting for. I, for one, not a fan of this bill, but it's going to be up for, again, discussion and public testimony today in Senate State Affairs Committee at 3:30 p.m. So those are your opportunities for discussion today. Well, yesterday, the Alaska Senate approved a new formula for the PFD, and you knew it was coming. You knew it was going to happen, and they're making it the 75-25. So the government gets 75% with only 25% for the PFD, and Lyman Hoffman had the audacity to call this a fiscal plan. This is a fiscal plan. As Shelley Hughes said, a PFD cut is not a fiscal plan. This is not the whole. Interestingly enough, according to some of my well-placed sources inside the legislature, yes, I have well-placed sources inside the it's noted, although I see that the ADN really didn't make any mention of it, but both the Alaska Beacon and Must Read Alaska said Scott Kawasaki was absent. But according to my sources, He was in the building. He just did not want to go on record for this. I mean, that's what this is all about. He did not want to go on record for this bill. He was in the building, but excused from the vote, which, come on, man. Seriously. I mean, you're supposed to be a stalwart champion of the dividend, and you didn't want to, and I think this is much ado about nothing, quite honestly, at this point, because first of all, it has to go to the House, where pretty much everybody has already said this is a non-starter for them. And the Senate majority, the Biden caucus majority, allowed their members to split on this. It was a 12-7 vote. 12-7 vote. Kawasaki was absent. That left 19 votes. So you had the 3 in the minority, right? And then Bill Wielechowski, Matt Clayman, Forrest Dunbar, and David Wilson all voted against which that's just like a marriage made in hell right there. Surprisingly enough, or I guess unsurprisingly, if you've been kind of following the debate around the PFD, George Rauscher, the Republican from Anchorage, voted for it. I mean, which, he represents a fairly well-to-do area, a top 20% area for sure, and apparently is all okay with taking that money. I don't understand it personally. I can't wrap my brain around it, but there it is. Of course, the rest of the Democrats, as well as Bert Stedman, Click Bishop, Gary Stevens, as well, all voted in favor of it as well, because that's the only thing that they know how to do: spend. They just can't and Kathy Giesel. Kathy Giesel's the other Republican, and I air quotes Republican. So, if this thing went into effect, you would get $1,300 dividend, and it would go, don't worry, you could get a 50-50 dividend. You would just have to be able to figure out how to collect $1.3 billion in reoccurring additional revenue by 2030. By 2030. Oh, and you'd have to put $3.5 billion into the CBR. Just those things. Just those two things. No big deal. No big deal. Shelley Hughes said, this is like she said, this is like building a road into she said, what is it? She said, picture a road going right into a mountain, like into this edge of a mountainside. Envision a road running right into a mountain. That's how I see this bill. The mountain is the unattainable revenue. I mean, just picture a road. And I'm like, well, why not just picture the thing that I've always talked about? The bridge is out. Here it is. And they're like, hold my beer. You ain't going to believe this. And they just keep shoveling coal into the box. The bridge is out, but we'll jump that gap, right? No big deal. So, I mean, here it is. But then it's got to go over to the House. And again, it's a non-starter over there. I don't know what's going to happen. I guarantee you, special sessions on the horizon, baby. I just don't see a way for them to overcome this at this point in 15 days. I mean, it takes 10 days at least for the conference committee bill. So we'll see what happens here. But we'll get Brad Keithley's take on this and more. It's all up ahead. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Weekly Top 3 up next.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend. Michael Duke Show.
I mean, really. $1.3 billion in new revenue, and by the way, $3.5 billion in the CBR, additional in the CBR. I mean, come on, it's gonna. And then they look at you with a straight face, and Lyman Hoffman with a straight face looked at the camera and said, "This is a fiscal plan. This is a fiscal plan. We're going to take all your money and spend it. That's a fiscal plan." Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. It was, and I appreciate that. It was Kaufman, not Rauscher. I apologize. It was Kaufman. Uh, uh, sorry. Looking at too many things this morning. I'll correct that on the other side of the break there. All right. Not going to get a dividend. Breaking news, says Rick Williams. COVID-37 hits Juneau. It's always something. Yeah, I meant Kaufman. It was my fault. So thank you guys. I'll get it squared away here. Just a second. I will amend my language on the other side. All right. Well, let's get into this thing. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is ready to join us. I mean, I hope he's ready. I mean, it's early. It's early. Yeah. Hey, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. You did promote Rauscher to the Senate. I mean, that's some plus.
Well, that was my fault. Too many things flying around in my head this morning. Easy to make a mistake when you talk for 10 hours plus on the radio every week. It's easy to step in it occasionally. Won't be the last mistake I make this week alone, let alone for today. So we'll get that squared away. How are things going, my friend? How you doing?
They're doing great. The Shelley Hughes quote about running into the mountain was a good one. She also had a great retort to Kathy Giesel. Giesel was talking about, we need this money because we've got, people who are hungry and don't have food, and, they need food stamps. So we need more money for staff, state staff, to be able to send food staffs out. And Shelley's retort was, what if we just give them their PFD and let them buy their own groceries?
Right.
As opposed to running the money through government. It was a great retort.
Yeah, no, I love this is Kathy Giesel, we need new revenue, not from oil. We need more revenue from other sources. We need to work hard so we can continue to provide the services that all of us depend on. Then she said, Giesel said the successive legislature's flat budgets have had consequences, pointing to seriously, flat budgets have had. Shut up. Just get out of the room. Just get out of the room. Is anybody buying the whole flat budgets consequences thing? It's obvious we had the largest budget in state history passed last year, but it's flat budgets. It's flat budget. I just shut up.
Except there's flat budgets except for the last three, and then
except for the last three and a few. Then there was a couple of years of kind of flat budget, and then there was years where we spent all this stuff from savings. So don't pay no attention to any of that. Flat budgets, back in 2005, we had a flat budget, and that's counting for all this stuff.
What I really like is they try to count. What is it? 2018? 2019. They try to count the year. Maybe it was 2020. They try to count one of the years as a flat budget, but they don't count the supplemental that got piled back into that year
the following year
from the subsequent year. And so, this period of flat budgets, if you don't look in the in the files and actually look at the real numbers, then they're flat budgets.
Yeah. If you don't look at the actuals, it's fine. The proposed budget was flat. What they actually spent was not flat. I know it's insane. Okay, well, we're 20 seconds out. We're ready to go. We're going to continue here in just a second. Brad Keithley is our guest. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. I'm going to do the Kaufman and Rauscher mea culpa here, and we'll get back to this. Don't go anywhere. Back with more. Okay, welcome back to the program, The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. It's Tuesday, the weekly top three. But before I get into it with Brad, oh man, did I step in it. I made a mistake, which again, as I said earlier, will not be the last mistake I've made this week. Not blocking Harold, definitely a mistake. There were some other mistakes going on, but I said earlier that George Rauscher was the one that voted for the bill, which was totally George Rauscher's in the House. I was Kaufman, James Kaufman. I don't know why Anyway, just one of those things. You talk for 10 hours a week live on the radio without a script, and you're eventually going to step in it, and I stepped in. It was James Kaufman, Senator James Kaufman, not George Rauscher from the House. Sorry, George, my mistake. James Kaufman. I don't know why I swapped the faces in my brain, but there you go. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Hello, my friend. Weekly top three. Dunleavy has talking a lot about balance. He's talking a lot about how you can't take from one to give to the other and other, which sounds great on paper, but it's obviously nobody's listening. So hit us with the beginning of the weekly top three here.
Well, I think sometimes you look for quotes that sort of summarize or capture the point you're trying to make and sort of play up that quote. And I think one of the governor's quotes from last week's press conference, where he announced that there wasn't a fiscal plan. Let's have a press conference to announce there's not a fiscal plan, but we hope there will be one. But one of the comments he made in last week's press conference, I think, is one of those quotes I'm going to be coming back to often. He said, "A broad-based solution that doesn't gouge or take huge parts from one sector or another, or penalize one sector or another, is probably the most important thing we can do." And I absolutely agree with that. He was talking about revenues and developing new revenues and a fiscal plan that doesn't gouge one sector or another. And I think that's a great quote. It's in fact the quote that applies to the Fiscal Policy Working Group and the work that they did a couple of years ago. It's the quote that probably applies to Ben Carpenter's Ways and Means Committee and the work they're doing. It's great to see the governor endorse it. Now, whether his plans have lived up to that's another question. But it's a quote that I think really captures what we're trying to do. One more time, a broad-based solution that doesn't gouge or take huge parts from one sector or another, or penalize one sector or another, is probably the most important thing we can do. And the converse of that is everybody's got to have some skin in the game. We shouldn't take too much from one sector. We shouldn't gouge one sector. We shouldn't do POMV 2575 and take solve the fiscal plan on the backs of middle and lower income Alaska families. But the converse of it is that everybody's got to have skin in the game. Everybody's got to put some skin in the game. That means something from just like the Fiscal Policy Working Group proposed, something from the PFD, something from upper income Alaska families through some sort of revenue, something from the oil companies and so on. And I think that is sort of the key that we ought to be looking for. Yesterday's vote in the Senate was anything but that. It is, as Shelley Hughes put it, as Rob Myers put it, as Mike Schauer put it, as even Forrest Dunbar put it. And if somebody wants to see a surprising speech from yesterday's floor vote, go find Forrest Dunbar's, because that was a remarkably a remarkable speech in terms of the stand he was taking for middle and lower income Alaska families. As they noted yesterday, as all of those floor speeches noted yesterday, the 25-75 plan, or as Bert talks about it, and as Lyman talks about it, the 75-25 plan, putting government first, and appropriately, in their minds, appropriately so, putting government first and the 25% to Alaska families. The 25-75 plan is anything but a balanced approach. It, as Shelley pointed out, and as Rob pointed out, and as others pointed out, it funds government on the backs of middle and lower income Alaska families. And for anybody to think, Bert made this long speech where he was throwing out a bunch of numbers and trying to give people the big picture. Well, the big picture, what nobody noted was that the big picture is that 25-75 doesn't solve the problem. If the problem is $1.3 billion
Yeah.
which Bert kept coming back to do all the things we need to do. We need $1.3 billion in additional revenues. We need this. We need additional money in the CBR. If the number is $1.3 billion, 2575 doesn't give you $1.3 billion. It gives you $1 billion. It gives you enough to cover the deficit, projected deficit. If $1.3 billion is the total deficit you're looking at, gives you enough to cover the projected deficit, the sort of the build up to that over the next couple of years. But by the third year, we're back into deficits. And we need to remember that the Senate proposed 2575 is just a statute. And listening to all these people talk about, oh, it's a statute, and we're really making a solid case here, and we're really making a solid stand, and this is the fiscal solution for. Well, it's a statute,
Right?
And you've ignored the statute for the past, the statute that's already on the books for the past. So what what faith should we have that the new statute you're enacting is going to do anything?
And kudos to Sean McGuire for mentioning this. He's the only one of all the reporting that mentioned that the nonpartisan, quote unquote, legislative finance position projected that the 75-25 would leave the state with a deficit within 3 years. So it doesn't fix anything. It's not a long-term fiscal plan. It's a short-term Band-Aid on a spurting arterial wound. We're going to take 75%, and that just means in 3 years they'll come back and say, oh, 100%, 100%. It's got to be 100%. I mean, that's what's happening.
Well, they'll ratchet it down over time. It'll be 80-20. It'll be the 80-20 plan, and then the 85-15 plan, and then the 90-10 plan, and then maybe we'll get to the end of it. But Dunleavy has it right. Dunleavy has it right in terms of a little bit from everybody. No one gets gouged. Everybody contributes. And if everybody contributes, it's not that much from everybody. I mean, you got a POMV 50-50, which is consistent with what Hammond, believed in the first place. You take some from the oil companies. You take some from upper income Alaska families through a revenue measure that has them participating, unlike PFD cuts. You take some maybe from tourists. You take some from non-residents in some fashion, either through non-resident workers in the state, non-residents with income in the state, or non-residents spending money in the state as tourists. You get everybody in, and if you get everybody in, it's not that much from each participant. And then you put some sort of spending cap on top of that. You cap it off, and that's a fiscal plan. But this approach that the Senate passed yesterday is anything but a fiscal plan. It's, as I think you've got a great quote on that, it's a Band-Aid on top of the spouting arterial wound.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's part of the problem all the time. We have to do something. We have to look like we're doing something. So we're trying to triage this, and we're snake bit, and they're like, oh, here's a lollipop. That'll help. I mean, it's not working. I mean, what you're doing is a short-term fix for a problem that you created, and you're looking like you want to try and fix it. But the bottom line is you're setting us up for failure in the future. Like you said, maybe in 3 years with this deficit, if everything went out the way they wanted with the 75-25, in 3 years, they may just turn it to zero, or they just may ratchet. Oh, now it's 80. Oh, now it's 85. Now it's 95. By the time you're at the 5-6 year mark, oh, it's 100%. Oh, and by the way, now we need some form of taxation because we just can't. You need your services.
It was disingenuous of Bert. I mean, after having run through all the, excuse me, after having run through all those numbers, it was disingenuous of Bert not to admit that this is just a temporary fix, and it sets up the next step. We've got to have people who are honest addressing this issue, and I need to recognize that the governor stepped up. The governor is stepping up and saying we need revenues to fix this, but we need to fix it not on the backs of any one given group. We need to, everybody needs to chip in toward the solution. It needs to be balanced, not gouging any one group. And I think that's great. Now, the governor needs to step up and actually follow through on that. I mean, he needs to actually, propose a plan that does exactly what he set out as the standard. And he's not done that. But at least we have some standard now that has been set out by at least one part of the government, the executive branch, as the standard that we're shooting for, that makes some sense. Now we need people to follow through, and now we need people to be honest about the situation, as opposed to Bert's numbers games where he doesn't admit that we're right back into it in 3 years.
Well, I think it's interesting that we're seeing more commentary. We had The Economist that was a couple of weeks ago, admitting that this is a tax on Alaskans and it disproportionately affects, you got the governor saying it needs to be a more balanced approach and things like that. There are some people who were kind of been quieter about this that are now starting to point out the obvious part, saying the quiet part out loud, that this disproportionately affects the lowest, 50% of income earners in the state of Alaska. And it really doesn't help the middle class either. I mean, the only ones benefiting are the top 20.
Right. It's not, people talk about this being a low income issue. It's not. I mean, middle income Alaska families, 80% of Alaska families, including, and depending upon how you break up the brackets, if you break them up into quintiles, you got the low 20, the low middle 20, you've got the middle 20, the high middle 20, and then the upper 20. The 60% in the middle, all the low middle, the middle, and the upper middle are all disproportionately affected by using PFD cuts. They all would pay less, contribute less, be required to contribute less through another revenue mechanism. I mean, whether it's sales taxes or flat taxes or income taxes, whatever it is, they all would contribute less.
Yeah, I mean, look, a family of four making $110,000 a year, family of four, if you took, you take their 3 PFDs away, or the majority of them away, that's 10%. That's like $9,000 that's being taken right out of their pockets. I mean, that's not an insignificant amount. That's almost, 8-9%? I mean, that's insane. I mean, it does affect people who are in the middle income as well. It just affects those who are in the lower income more. And at least people are starting to admit it and admit that it's a tax. I mean, that's the big thing. It's a taking. And I know the services, and we've got that's insane. It's absolutely insane.
You juxtapose Kathy Giesel's floor speech yesterday against Forrest Dunbar's. I mean, everybody expected Shelley and Rob to do a great job defending the PFD. But the one I really want people to focus on is Forrest Dunbar's speech. You juxtapose Giesel saying, "Oh, we got to take this money because we got to spend on government to protect all these people." You juxtapose that against Forrest's argument that, look, you're taking too much money from middle and lower income Alaska families. We need to be fair about this. We need to have a full fiscal plan that treats everybody fairly, not just take it off the backs of middle and lower income Alaska families. And he used that phrase, and you've got it, and you see, you see the difference between the top 20% Republicans. What that really tells you is the difference between the top 20% Republicans. Ooh, we need government spending, but we don't want to pay for it. And somebody who truly is focused on middle and lower income Alaska families, 80% of Alaska families. Yeah, maybe we need government, but it shouldn't be done on the backs of middle and lower income Alaska families. So there is these sprouts, these sprigs, like the governor's quote. There are these sprigs of green that are coming through the snow, but we aren't at a fiscal plan yet.
Well, yeah, we're nowhere near a fiscal plan. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Oof, man, we're gonna run long here today, I can tell. Brad, give me a tease for number two, which is the top 20% creating their own little refuge, their own little paradise.
Karl Marx, who's a great foil. Karl Marx wrote an op-ed in the ADN that I got to admit, I just laughed all the way through. It's so transparent what's going on. Marx's headline was something like, "Alaska doesn't need new taxes." The subtext of it was, Alaska doesn't need new taxes that reach the top 20%. We're just fine with taking taxes from middle and lower income Alaska families. But we're going to talk a little bit about Marx's editorial, and we're going to talk a little bit about what he and the other his friends in the top 20% are trying to achieve.
Wait, you mean they're trying to shield themselves from paying any more? Shocking, I tell you. Absolutely shocking. I'm flabbergasted. We're back with more. Brad Keithley, our guest, the weekly top 3. It is the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Oh, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable. We're going to stretch to try and get to 3. I may force Brad to stay with us. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how we go here as we go through here. But Brad, this is, again, the theater. I mean, this is really what it was. It was kabuki theater on the floor of the Senate yesterday, telling us all these things about, oh, we can't, we've got to. And this is the irony. The House, members of the House, Kevin McCabe, et cetera, actually compromised and said, okay, we'll come off the full PFD down to the 50-50 PFD because that's Hammond's vision. We'd like to stay at but we'll come down as a compromise. And the other side's like, okay, great. So we're going to move it to 75-25. It's not how compromise works. I mean, that's not how it's, but they are just bound and determined to get to that point to where government sucks up all the oxygen in the room. And now apparently Kevin said, I didn't even notice this. They want to spend $1.4 billion to inflation proof. The POMV plan it's got built-in inflation proofing. That's what it's supposed to. Now you want to take another billion? I mean, how are you ever going to get to the 1.3 billion in new revenues and 3.5 billion in the CBR? It's a pipe dream. It's never going to happen. It's basically them going, let me give you the finger and then see what's going, good luck getting to that side, I mean, it's exactly what it is. It's unattainable.
It was humorous. It was humorous to hear Lyman and Burt to some degree, defend 75-25. We got to remember they're putting government first in these numbers, 75-25. It was humorous to hear them defend that and say, well, we're giving you a plan. We're giving you a way to develop new revenues and to get back to 50-50, to buy your way back to 50-50. By the way, you have to pay more than just the difference between 25-75 and 50-50. You have to pay about $1 billion more, and you have to put money into the CBR to do it. But we're giving you a way to get back. To hear them do that, and then hear Kathy Giesel, well, we can't do it on the backs of the resource companies. My God, that would be a horrible way to do it. And that Bert's chairman and intends to stay chairman for life of Senate Finance and block any revenue measures that he doesn't like. So here's a plan. Oh, by the way, we're in charge of whether you get that additional revenue, and we're opposed to new revenues coming from anybody else other than middle and lower income Alaska families. But here's your way to do it. It was kabuki theater. I agree with that. It was disingenuous. It was dishonest. Yeah. It was not telling Alaskans the truth.
It's like we're all going to play this air hockey game, and this one, my friends, is for all the marbles. And then Bert Stedman takes a milk carton and puts it right in front of his goal. Go for it. There you go. You can make it. It'll be fine. I mean, wait a second. I mean, this is the field is rigged from the very beginning. And like you said, yeah, Bert Stedman, he wants to be finance chair for life. And as far as I can tell, although somebody from Sitka the other day, I was speaking with somebody from Sitka, and they said, well, there's a move to get him out. And I'm like, why? He's giving them everything that they want. And there obviously is Seattle North for many of the people that are down there at Sitka, it seems like. So why would they want to change out Bert? Because he's given them everything they want. It seems to be no indication in the last 15, 18 years that he's been in there that there's anybody that could move him off the dime right now. I mean, maybe.
And he and Lyman have shown, I mean, as with the Senate as closely divided as it truly is, if this Senate doesn't reflect the true division that's in there, with the Senate as divided as it truly is, Bert and Lyman, and Donnie are willing to go any direction, just as long as they're in power, just as long as they get to continue to be chairs or co-chairs. The senator from Fairbanks, Click Bishop, is another one of those. We'll go. We don't care what side we're on, as long as we're in power, as long as we're the ones that are able to do it. So
that's the word, power.
And,
yeah.
And so Bert is sitting there going, I'm just gonna keep playing the game and I'll continue to be here. And yeah, you can earn your way back into it. You can pass all these revenues. Yeah, try and do it through my committee, but you can pass all these revenues.
Don't worry, I got it. It's all taken care of. Don't worry about it. I mean, come on, seriously. The walrus has spoken. All right. Dude, I'm so frustrated watching this. I mean, I knew this was going to be a bad year. I knew this was going to be a year where nothing was going to get done. Then we saw how the majority shook out. I knew it was going to be even worse. And now here it is. And this, my friends, is a stereotypical example of the direct application of the retention of power. That's exactly what it is. But you were 100% right. Click and Bert and all these guys would be like, I'll wear whatever animal you want on my lapel as long as I can still sit here at this table and be the one that directs everything. I don't care. It's all about pro-government spend at any cost. At any cost to the private sector. Doesn't matter what it does to the private sector. As long as our spend is protected, we're good to go. All right. On that happy thought, let's return for number two. Number two, which is, of course, them creating this utopia of government spend with absolutely no consequences for their donor class, the top 20%. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Let's get to it. Here we go. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, continues with us this morning. The weekly top three, we're only up to number two. Number two is the direct top 20% utopia that they're trying to create. Brad, hit me with your thoughts on what's going on right now with the powers that be in the legislature.
Well, Karl Marx writes these op-eds near the end of every session, and it's intended to, flail the flag of no taxes, and it's really the same op-ed, just written every year with a few new words. But this one is Alaska doesn't need new taxes. Well, we already have taxes. PFD cuts our taxes. We're long since past recognizing that. So what Mars is really trying to do is say we don't need taxes on the top 20%. We need to continue harvesting the taxes we have on middle and lower income Alaska families, PFD cuts. We need to continue relying on those. We don't need new taxes that might reach the top 20%. And what's really going on here, and I'm sure I'm repeating myself from prior programs, but what's really going on here is the top 20% are trying to create this tax haven nirvana, this Alaska tax haven nirvana, where they get all the government services they want, increased K through 12, the university fully funded, big capital budget, so the contractor portion of the top 20% get all the profits they need. Child care. Now we're going to have government subsidized child care. That's in the Senate. That's in the Senate budget, where they have all of these government services, but they don't have to pay for it by pushing the cost down to middle and lower income Alaska families. And they keep trying to sell Alaska as no taxes. We're a no tax state. Well, it's no taxes for the top 20%. It's a great haven, tax haven for the top 20%. We're sort of like one of these Caribbean countries now, We're a tax haven, but we're only a tax haven for a portion of the population. We're a tax haven for the those in the top 20%. We're not a tax haven for anybody else. So you get this nirvana out there of fully funded government services, a lot of government services. Complain about not having enough government services. Kathy Giesel, we need more money to have more government services. Teachers need more money. Well, let's just give more money to the BSA. Let's create more money for K through 12. The university, we need the university for stuff, whatever we need the university for. Let's give them more money. Roger Hickel needs more capital budget. Well, let's give him some more money. Let's increase the capital budget. But let's make sure that we don't have to pay for it. And when you read these op-eds, you really need to understand what they're arguing for. They're arguing for no taxes on themselves.
Right.
They don't
Because
care. They don't care about anybody else.
Yeah, and again, I mean, some of the commentary and things like, "Oh, you're just for taxes." We are okay. Let me point it out. Let me come to me first. Let me come to me. We are already being taxed. Everybody in the state's being taxed. Unfortunately, it's disproportionately affecting the lowest 60% of income earners to the majority of the extent, even the lowest 80%. We are already being taxed. That's the bottom line. I mean, right, Brad? I mean, that's the point. The point is what we have right now protects government spend above all else. And as you said accurately, I think that word works well, harvests it from the lowest 80%, which are that's the vast majority of the population. The top 20% is a smaller slice. I mean, fractionally smaller slice. And they are the ones that are going like, sure, go ahead, make that new program. No problem. We're happy with it. We'll create a company that actually services that and takes money from the government for that. We'll do that. That's a good idea, Cap. That's an entrepreneurship.
Yeah. The no taxes. I mean, I've become very intolerant of those who go around saying no taxes, no taxes. We already have taxes. What you're really arguing for is no taxes on the top 20%. That's just the basics of what you're arguing for. And that's, if you're in the top 20%, I understand why you're doing that. If you're in the bottom 80%, I don't quite get why you're doing that, because you're just helping out the top 20% keep their nirvana. We are only going to get government spending under control. We are only going to get government spending control when, as Dunleavy says, everybody, the reverse of what Dunleavy said, everybody has skin in the game. We are only going to get government spending under control once everybody has skin in the game. If you leave some group out, I don't care if it's the top 20%, the bottom 20%, the middle 20%. If you leave some group out, they're going to continue to press for spending because they don't have to pay for it. You're only going to get spending under control if everybody has to contribute toward the cost. You get spending, you extend the responsibility to contribute to government, to Natasha von Imhoff, to Karl Marx, to others, all of a sudden, to the Binkleys, all of a sudden they're going to be saying, wait, we don't need to be subsidized childcare. We don't need to be doing state subsidized childcare. You're going to have that sort of reaction. If they have to pay a part of the bill, you're going to have that sort of reaction. But as long as they're able to push it down to middle and lower income Alaska families, as long as Karl Marx's no taxes is the mantra, you're going to continue to get state subsidized childcare. You're going to continue to get BSA increases. You're going to continue to get big capital budgets. You're going to continue to get university spending because they enjoy the benefits of it, but they don't have to pay for it. Get everybody in the game, and then we'll get a rational fiscal plan. Leave somebody out of the game, bottom 20%, top 20%, and we won't have a rational fiscal plan because somebody will have an incentive to continue to push for spending because it's on somebody else's back.
Right. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is our guest. Brad, this goes right back to what I've been saying for the last, 2 years more than anything else. We've really got to stop looking at this from a partisan standpoint of Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. This really, in this state, it is broken down to a very unique dichotomy. It is the pro-government spend versus the pro-private sector spend. That's really what it's breaking down to right now. And unfortunately, we've got this weird divide where we've got a welfare state that again fixates on the lowest income earners getting welfare of one type and the highest income earners getting welfare of another type, the corporate type welfare. And so we're in a very unique place in this country when it comes to these kind of things. And I mean, it's really a marriage made in hell because it's created this dichotomy and this push-pull where the public sector is supreme over all things.
Yep. And Rob Myers makes the best point about that. Rob Myers says, you want to build something in the state, you want money to do something in the state, you got to go to state government. I mean, they've created a system where you've got to go to state government because they're the ones that have all the money. What Hammond did through the PFD was try to get some of that money in the hands of the people so people could make their own decisions about what they wanted to do. Entrepreneurs could have, some sort of cash flow, some sort of nest egg to be able to build up and do something. But now with PFD cuts, they're taking that source of money into the private sector out of it, converting it over to government, and creating a situation in which only government, 60 plus one, decide, what gets funded in the state, what gets done in the state. And so they've created a situation where the top 20% who want more money, they want to go to, let's have a bigger capital budget. Let's have a bigger K through 12 budget. Let's have a bigger, university budget. But don't make us pay for it, because, we're the beneficiaries of it. We don't want to have to pay for it.
Right.
Let's just continue building government. And it is a unique system. I mean, I try to explain this to people in the lower 48, my friends in the lower 48 that are involved in fiscal policy, and they go, we don't understand that.
Yeah.
And you don't understand it because we've got this weird, hugely regressive tax that's funding all of it.
Well, and Hammond never put it in these terms, but essentially with the PFD, he was trying to strengthen the connection between the public and the private economy, because he could see what was happening. The legislature took those monies, like that first $900 million payment, and they blew through it like it was a house of fire, and he could see what was going to happen. It was going to grow government outside of the control of the people. And so although he didn't put it in those terms, the PFD was created to ultimately create a stronger linkage between the public and the private sector, and they've been whittling away at it since 2016.
Hammond did understand, and Hammond did say things that connect to that. I mean, Hammond said, if you want more spending than what the other 50% can provide, then we need taxes. And taxes are the mechanism, the sort of Damocles that would hang over the legislature's broad-based taxes, the sort of Damocles that would hang over the legislature's head and say, you want more spending, then you're going to have to impose taxes, broad-based taxes that will affect the top 20%, will affect all Alaska families, and they'll push back on it. What's happened is by not using taxes for the additional revenues to allow them to use additional PFD cuts, you've taken that sort of Damocles away, hanging over the legislature's head, and so they just continue spending because they don't have to respond to their donors in the top 20%.
Brad, we're out of time. Do you want to hang over for number 3? Or are you?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
All right. I know. I talked him into it. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3. Number 3 is coming up, and that is the question on oil tax that nobody is asking yet. Brad's going to give us some details on that, and we'll finish up. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget, you can come out and join us on Facebook if you'd like. Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. Hour 2, dead ahead. Be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you on the other side. I mean, tell me how you really feel. It's infuriating because you can see they literally are like taking hatchets to the cable to, they want to be free of that private economy. They don't want to have any consequences. They just want it to live in its own little government-run, self-contained bubble. As long as we can, that was the whole talk about the $100 billion permanent fund. If we can get it to that, then we can just spin off money. Although, looking at the historical spending habits of the legislature, that wouldn't last long. It wouldn't be 5% anymore. It would be, we need more than $5 billion. Now we need a $120 billion fund or a $150 billion fund or a $400 billion fund, because there's no way they could live within their means.
To that point, it's interesting to see the evolution of the discussion of 25-75. I refuse to say 75-25, 25-75. It's interesting to see the evolution of 25-75 over the course of this legislature, maybe the last 2 legislatures. When 25-75 was first proposed, it was going to spin off a bunch of savings, right, that would go into the permanent fund and build up that permanent fund to $100 billion. They no longer talk about it that way. The reason they no longer talk about it that way is spending has increased to the point that they need 25-75 just to pay for ongoing government expenses. I mean, the Senate budget this year is at 25-75, and it's got a $90 million, a fraction of 1%. They got a $90 million surplus that'll be eaten up before the budget before the budget fully goes through, and that's all that's left out of this huge surplus that they said they were going to run with 25-75. when last legislature, earlier this legislature, when they talked about 25-75, it was going to get us through the next 10 years without deficits, and then we'd address it at the end of the 10-year period. Now it gets us through 2 years before we run back into deficits. And what's happened is spending is creeping right on up. 25-75. Well, that's all that government money. Let's have a bigger capital budget. Let's do the BSA. Let's do K through 12. Let's fully fund the
immediately consumed. It won't be 24 months and they'll be right back to the drawing board again, because it is not a fiscal plan. They're just like, fill the hole. It's like the bucket with the hole in the bottom, and they just keep shoveling stuff into it. And they're like, well, I don't know why this bucket won't fill up, because you're spending it faster than you can put it in there. That's for sure. Jim asked the question, Brad, and this is a good one for you. When you're talking about the top 20% and the lower 80%, what income ranges are you talking about?
Top 20% is about $120,000 household income and above.
Yeah.
In Alaska.
Yeah. So top 20% is a pretty significant chunk. But even then, like I said, when you're talking about lower to middle income or even high middle income in the $100,000 range for a family of four, I mean, that's a significant amount of money when you're talking about taking 8, 9, 10% out of it every year. It still hurts. I mean, I guarantee around my house, it still hurts. When you see that, when you've got 4 or 5 people, 6 people are supposed to get dividends, and all of a sudden it's crickets, you're like, ooh, that was stuff that we could have really done some good with, and you can't do it, and it's taxed right out the door.
Yep. It's and at the lower level of the top 20%, it's still fairly close. I mean, it's still a flat tax and PFD cuts take just about the same at the lower level of top 20%. It's once you kick in, I mean, to some degree, the proposal on an income tax that would kick in at $200,000 had it right. That's really where you start feeling the difference between PFD cuts and a flat tax.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. I was going to ask you, more of your thoughts on the floor session yesterday, because I only got a chance to watch a couple of the speeches. I couldn't make it through Bert's speech because I just started to watch it, and then I was like, no, I can't. I'm getting dumber by the minute. I cannot do that. But there was a lot of that whole, well, the government really takes care of you in every aspect, so we have to make sure that it's fully funded. And I kept thinking, if you gave Alaskan families, the average family of 3 or 4, their full dividend, that would probably go a lot further than trying to provide somebody with services that they may need, or they may utilize, or may never utilize, especially the lower middle income folks. I mean, they don't qualify for most of that stuff, and you're taking it right out of their pockets.
Yeah, Shelley had a great, as I said earlier, Shelley had a great rejoinder to Kathy Giesel, and Kathy was saying, "Oh, we need this government money because we need to fund people to send out food stamps." And Shelley said, "Well, why don't we just give the dividend to those in the lower income Alaska families so they can pay for their own groceries, as opposed to having to wait for government to come along to pay for it." People need to watch. If you're really interested in the floor debate yesterday, you need to watch Rob and Shelley and Shower, but also include Forrest Dunbar's speech in there. I was sort of shocked, but Forrest gave an excellent rejoinder to the proposal on the floor yesterday, and I think it's a great speech.
Again, like I said, the lowest income earners at least have access to some of the social safety net stuff that they keep talking about. It is really those who are just outside of that, who make too much money to be able to participate in that are harmed the most by this.
And that's why the top 20% try to emphasize lowest, that PFDs are good for lowest, but we've got other ways. What they say is we've got other ways of taking care of them. It's middle income Alaska families that are really getting hosed by PFD cuts. They're the ones that are losing more through PFD cuts than they would through taxes. And that's where that's the focus of the argument.
Absolutely. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The Michael Duke Show continues. Hour 2 right now.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live from the world.
Across the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Welcome to Tuesday. No, I did not bring tacos. I'm sorry. You're on your own on that one. We're ready to jump back into it, though. We held over our guest, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is normally with us in hour one to go through the weekly top three, but we were so verbose telling you all about how we really feel about this stuff that we never even got up to number three. And Brad was kind enough to continue with us and stick around for the third part of today's program. And so we jump over to him and join him right now. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Brad, thanks for sticking with us. I really appreciate it. So number three, and by the way, you missed a lot of the good in-between stuff. You can go back and listen to it on the podcast, the behind the commercial break stuff. Lots more good stuff peeled out there. But number three, Brad, and this is one of the things is the question that nobody's asking about oil taxation yet. Now, again, to clarify for those nervous Nancys and Karens out in the chat room and out in the world, Brad is in favor of changing the taxation structure on the oil companies. We've talked about this for maybe $500 million still left on the table that we could be getting there. He does not have a lot of friends left in the oil companies after he supported some of the repeals and things and everything else that was going on in SB 21 and all that. But this is specifically about a question on the oil taxes, Brad.
So yesterday, one of the other things that happened yesterday was a hearing in Senate Finance, two hearings, in fact, in Senate Finance on oil taxes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. They were supposed to take public comment in the afternoon, but the hearing went long. The hearing with the invited guests went long, so they've put off public comment. And I was really disappointed in the hearings thus far. I mean, it's like everything else. We get into these polar opposites with the oil industry saying no taxes, any tax increase would be bad. In fact, at one point they implied that they needed a tax decrease in order to continue to have an incentive to develop. And then we have the Wielechowski bill on the other side that says, we just sort of need to tax as much as we possibly can think of taxing. And we've got into these polar opposites again that I think, we don't have a lot of time left. And so everybody's going to lock into their foxholes and fight it, throw shots across the field at each other without really trying to get to the center. Oil taxes are a math problem. They're nothing more than a math problem. And the math problem is, what's the revenue maximizing point for oil taxes? And it's a question of how much tax can you levy in whatever form, property tax, production tax, royalty, doesn't really matter. How much government take can you levy without killing the golden goose, right? Without tipping over the decline curve into so steep a decline curve that you actually lose money. I mean, you can increase your per barrel take to the point that there's no investment and the decline curve ends up with Alaskans getting less money out of the oil industry than they are now. And it's a math problem. It's where is the sweet spot? Where is the revenue maximizing point? How much can we take? How much can government take without tipping the decline curve over to the point where after a few years we're actually losing money from where we otherwise would be if we kept taxes level? It's a formula. It's a give me the inputs of what the decline curve is. Let me focus on at various revenue levels, various government take levels. Let me focus on those government take levels and let me figure out what the revenue maximizing point is. Nobody talked about that yesterday. It was everybody to their foxholes. I mean, AOGA was so bad that they were even defending the Hillcorp loophole. I mean, come on, you can't defend the Hillcorp loophole. The Hillcorp loophole is BP paid so much as a C corp. Hillcorp's an S corp, which means they're organized as an LLC. They came in and bought BP, so no longer are they paying taxes at the corporate level. They're not paying taxes at the individual level because we don't have an income tax at the individual level. And so there's about $100 million gap between what the state would have received had it continued to be owned by BP and what the state's receiving as a result of Hillcorp having replaced BP. That's it. That's the Hillcorp loophole. Nothing to do with increased production incentive. Nothing to do with investment levels. That's it. That's the difference between the two. And AOGA is so in their foxhole that they're defending even that. I mean, I can see the internal AOGA board meeting, which was, we're all in this together, right? We're all going to defend each other, right? We're not going to start picking fights with each other, right? So we're all going to defend everything. And so they're over in their foxhole, and Wielechowski, to his credit, is out there at the other side, and Brenna's out there at the other side saying, we can take all this money from them. I mean, you compare it to North Dakota, or you compare it to some other state that we cherry pick, and we can take all this money from them. Well, the problem is if you take all that money from them, you may tip them over. There may not be enough investment. The decline curve may be steep, and we may end up, as Alaskans, losing more money. So the middle ground is, let's do the basic math. Let's figure out what the decline curve is. Let's figure out the revenue maximizing point, and let's go to the revenue maximizing point. No, crickets on that issue. Department of Revenue spoke. The administration's Department of Revenue, who really, the administration is the one government body that has enough information to be able to figure that out. They've got Department of Natural Resources that calculates decline curves. You got the Department of Revenue that calculates various ways of capturing the revenue. The administration is the one focal point that really could figure this out, other than the oil companies. But they spoke, and there wasn't anything even approximating an estimate of the revenue maximizing point. So we're in this debate again about oil taxes. There is money to be had. Certainly the Hillcorp loophole needs to be closed. There's money to be had from the other fields by figuring out the revenue maximizing point, but no one's trying to do it. And if we continue down this road of everybody in their foxholes, nobody trying to figure out, nobody doing the math calculation, nobody figuring out the math problem, we're never going to get to an answer. We're going to keep, as you and I have talked about on various other things about fiscal policy, we're going to keep running from one side of the ship to the other side of the ship, capsizing ourselves over.
That's the problem with focusing on the extremes, right? The extreme of, we'll take $1.5 billion on the one side, or 1.3 or whatever the number is, or no, leave it exactly like it is. We're doing just fine. Everything, it's the extremes. There's no discussion, and it doesn't seem there's like any real push to find the middle. Now, the House has been talking about a change in the oil tax structure, but in the fiscal policy working group thing, they were talking about like $300 million. So that seems like that was somewhere in the middle. Where is is anything coming out of there that is asking that question?
The House has talked about closing the Hillcorp loophole. They've talked about some adjustments on the per barrel credits, but I'm not seeing, even on the House side, I'm not seeing a presentation on the revenue maximizing point and calculating the revenue maximizing point. It's a simple math calculation. You need data to do it. You need to understand the decline curves to be able to do it, but it's a simple math calculation to do it. And I've not seen on either side anybody trying to do that. It's sort of like we were talking about the elephant, the old elephant story about, somebody touches here and they think it's a bear, or somebody touches there and they think it's a horse, and they don't see the big picture that it's an elephant. That's what we've got going on in the legislature about oil taxes. they're touching here and saying, oh my gosh, look at North Dakota or whatever other state I want to cherry pick. Look at North Dakota and they can tax up to this. And North Dakota that doesn't have the type of climate that we have, the entire environmental issues that we have, but we can tax up to this. And then, the AOGA, God love them, saying, oh, you can't touch anything. In fact, you really need to reduce taxes to maximize production here. It's a strange, for a government that is so tied to oil, that's so dependent on oil revenues, it's very strange to see how little we actually think through the issue and do the math problem. That's all it is. And do the math problem and come to the conclusion of the revenue maximizing point and then move on. We just don't do it.
Kevin McCabe in the chat room says there's no way to calculate the threat of oil companies stopping immediately investing in Alaska. How do we calculate that? And I think you just answered that. The governor has a lot of those numbers in the Department of Revenue, Department of DNR, the natural resources and stuff. They could pull that together, at least put together some kind of model, right? But it's not just, you can't just back of the napkin it. You got to have some hard numbers to know what's going on to begin with.
When the state debated going to a profits-based tax in the early 2000s, 2004, 2005, 2006, we ultimately ended up going to the extreme with ACES. But when we debated it in 2004, 2005, 2006, there actually was some serious effort by both the oil companies. There actually was a collaborative effort by both the oil companies and the state to figure out the revenue maximizing point. That ultimately got lost in Murkowski's decline, the rise of Sarah Palin, the LNG project, and everything else. It got very murky in the middle 2000s, but there was actually an effort to do it. It is calculable. It takes effort. It takes concentration. It takes an understanding of the international oil industry, and we hired experts back in the middle 2000s to do it. It is possible to do it. The state was on track to do it in the middle 2000s, and then it blew up with Palin and Murkowski. But it's not. We shouldn't dismiss it and say there's no way to do it. There is a way to do it, and the effort, the administration needs to put in the effort to do it. The legislature may need to hire experts to do it, but there is a way to do it. And just waving your hands and saying, "Well, I can't do that," is the wrong answer.
Right. Because if you're looking for the true solution, which is some form of taxation that increases without pushing them over the edge of lack of investment, you've got to find the sweet spot, and you can't do it by throwing darts at the board. You've got to have the information to do it. So it's going to take a little effort and a little money and some experts, maybe some cooperation from the oil company if they're willing to do it. I don't know if they'd even be willing to do it at this point.
Yeah, I lived through that effort in 2004, 2005, 2006. It was a very good effort. There were people who were really trying to legitimately 7, 8. It went on after that, legitimately trying to come to the right answer. And we sort of got there, but then didn't get there in the end because of the Palin issues.
Right. I got off the ball.
And Vico contributed to that as well.
Yeah. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Final thoughts here, Brad, as we wrap things up on the weekly top 3 in the last 15 days of the session.
I think we're if we're headed for a special session, that's fine. Special session on fiscal matters, getting a financial plan, that's fine. I think Dunleavy's got the right goal out there in talking about everybody gives a little. I think there has to be some hard effort put in on the oil tax side to find the right answer, but the answer's out there, and we just need to put in the effort to find it. They need to contribute. Alaskans need to contribute to some degree, but we need to do it fairly across all Alaska families. And if we need to push that to a special session, let's do it, and let's get it underway.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Thank you, Brad, for sticking over. We appreciate it. Folks, we got more.
Thanks for having me.
Folks, we got Chris Story coming up next. The 3 L's to a good life is going to be his topic. We're going to be jumping into that here in just a minute. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Brad Keithley wrapping things up here with Brad. The LLC change, that was something that, and that was a question that I had because I have not watched this closely enough to know the answer to this. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling back trying to find the comment here real quick. Bradley says, so if we get rid of the Hillcorp loophole, would that mean that every LLC in the state would have to pay a corporate tax? And I don't know if it's specific to Hillcorp or not. Brad, are you familiar enough with it to be able to answer that? I'm sorry, Brad, I had you muted during the outro music there. Go ahead.
You can limit the change to the taxation on the S corp to oil companies. We have special rules for taxes on oil corporations, and it's just including oil corporations that are organized as S corps in that group.
Right. So it wouldn't affect all the rest of them. I mean, I think this is, to me, that's a common sense approach. Donna says it's called the Laffer curve, by the way, that whole investment versus the thing. It's Art Laffer, the Laffer curve. So, I mean, to me, that just makes sense. You can't be on either extreme. You can't tax them so much that they just basically pull out and leave, take their toys and go home. But at the same time, you can't just let them run amok and give them, carte blanche to do what they do. We've got to meet somewhere in the middle on that. And like we said, the numbers that you and I have talked about here in the past has been, $400 or $500 million in still available on the table. And if we can find that middle ground, it'd be a good source of revenue and keep everything rolling and maybe take a little bit of the pressure off.
We spend way too much time worried about what other states are doing. Alaska is unique. We've got a unique environment. We've got a unique set of regulations. We've got a unique set of challenges out there. And what works in North Dakota, what works in West Texas, what works someplace else isn't quite isn't the rule. I mean, what works in Norway because of Norway's unique approach to government investment in the oil industry over there in oil field development is unique. Closest we come is really the North Sea. I mean, Alaska has always sort of grown up with the North Sea, always been developed with the North Sea. And looking at the North Sea, the UK portion of the North Sea it gives you some feel for what others are doing in a similar environment to Alaska. But we spend way too much time worrying about that. What we need to worry about is figuring out the revenue maximizing point, the Laffer curve for the oil industry. We need to figure out the revenue maximizing point for the oil industry here based upon factors here. And as I say, I mean, we've got Department of Natural Resources does decline curves all the time. That's how we get the production forecast out there. They go talk to the companies. They get information from the companies. They develop their own view of what the decline curves are going to be. They develop their own view of when fields are going to be developed. They get information from the oil companies to be able to do that, and they develop those production curves. Production curves have been pretty good lately. So we've got the information to be able to do it. We just don't focus on doing it. We focus on fighting about irrelevant things because that's what people want to fight about.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, ak4sb.com. You can find him on Facebook and Twitter if you want to go argue with him out there. He loves to do that. He loves to argue with you on Facebook and Twitter. Brad, thank you so much for coming on board, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you sticking long. I know that's you got other things to. I don't know what you got to do, being retired and all that, but I'm sure you got other things to do. Wine smoothies for you all morning. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you coming on board.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
All right, folks, we're jumping into it here. Let's get Chris Story on the line and see if we can get him squared away. Get ready to come back to this. Oh, look at that. Phone's ringing, and we are ready to go.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Fantastic.
Okay, well, 30 seconds out. We're ready to do it. The 3 L's to the good life. And I needed this. I need this. Good. Yeah, that's right. Get it all out. Get it all out now and be ready to go. We're going to pump yourself up. All right, here we go. Chris Story, our guest, The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Please like and share, like and follow, do all that stuff. And don't go away. I know we had a lot of people. You're going to you need to hear what Chris has got to say. That's all I got to say.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
I don't know what you mean. I have no idea what you're talking about. It's okay. Chris Story is here to save the day, to bring us up with our moment of positivity, the betterment segment of the program, where he helps us live our lives on top of the world a little bit better each and every day. Today, his topic is the 3 L's to a good life, which I believe are leisure, laudanum, and liquor. But I mean, no, it could be anyone. What, I don't know. 3 L's to a good life. Mr. Story, tell me what's going on here. How am I going to get better? Tell me all about it.
Laudanum, isn't that from like the 1800s
yeah,
or something?
Yeah.
How old are you?
I was just looking for L words. Laudanum's a little bit of opium kind of thing. Anyway, opium for the masses. That's what Chris Story is. What's going on?
Good morning, Michael. I've been thinking about a failure of mine. So it's twofold. It's a failure, and yet it's one of the things I'm most proud of in my life. So it's sort of this conundrum. And I thought, who better to share it with than Michael Dukes?
Hashtag feels good, feels bad, man. I mean, what? It's...
And what I'm about to share with you, I don't talk about that often. I don't try to win the victim Olympics or, the failure Olympics, as Seth Godin calls it. But had a really bad experience a number of years ago that was the closest thing to a financial collapse that I've ever been through. I wasn't poor, but I was broke. I wasn't broken, as they say, but it was a rough patch. And out of it came something that I'm really proud of. Well, overcoming, first of all, that's something to be proud of. You can look back on the other side. You can look from the peak and go, oh, I remember when I was in the valley on a number of levels, emotional, financial, all of it. But out of that time in the valley, riding through what appeared to be endless darkness, a story came to me, and I put that story to paper for myself. I wrote it down for me, and it came to me in a whole form. It was like I was describing something, and that's the only time that writing has ever come to me like that. And it's a story I ended up calling Born to Live. Everybody told me it was a terrible book title. Don't do it. It's awful. And it is. It is a terrible book title, and it almost sells no copies, and I don't care. I love that story. I wrote it for me.
Right.
And so it's a failure, but a success based on or coming through a moment in time, which I would describe as having been failing, not a failure. Me, I don't identify as that. I didn't even identify it as being a quote failure, just going through a very rough time. And I could see that it was a shadow. I could see that it was a very dark valley type of place. And out of it, again, came this story. And so, again, I wrote the book called Born to Live because, again, it was a very, very short little story, came to me. I put it out into the world because I thought if it could help just one person, then I owe it to myself and I owe it to that person to share this with the world. The essence of the book is a philosophy. And that philosophy is, well, the story is about a guy, first off, that's really down on his luck. That sounded familiar. And he finds purpose. And in the story, on the literal road to hope, he finds purpose. But it became a great metaphor, and out of it came a philosophy, which I call the 3 L's to the good life. And I've spoken about this to groups of people, and I talk about it kind of constantly in other ways, but not as direct as I'm telling you. But those 3 L's that came out of that book, which was born of this horrible time, are, number one, the first L is to look forward. And we'll go through them all independently unless you just kick me off the air. Look forward, learn from the past, and then live in the present. Living in the present is the crux of it all. But essentially, these 3 L's encompass a philosophy that I kind of was living by, but I really, once codified in writing, once I put it down on paper in front of me and I saw it, I said, oh, this is it. This is where it's at. So looking forward is all about goal setting, stuff you and I talk about all the time.
No, I mean, I think that's because, we know people who have been stuck in the past, right? I mean, it's the guy from high school that was, the high school, he was the captain of the football team and, everything's great, but you see him today and he's, working a blue collar job. And every time he gets together with his buddies, all he can talk about is the good old days of high school and things like that. I mean, I'm not chastising him. I'm just saying he's kind of trapped in the past. He's not looking forward. So instead of learning from the past and looking to the future, he's just kind of stuck there. And we've seen that. And then we've seen the other side of that, which is just daydreamers, right? They're always looking to the future. They're never living in the moment. They're never learning from their mistakes. They're not moving forward because they're so fixated on this future thing that they're not doing the work today to get to the future. So there's people on both sides of this equation.
So it takes a balance of that looking forward, just thinking about that. Okay, I'm going to set some goals. But if you can't be happy with who you are today, then likely you're not going to be happy with who you become into the future if you actually attain and achieve that goal. So it's just as you said, stuck in the past, be it of old glory days or even kind of reveling in trauma could be something that is, you just become almost addicted to it and it becomes your identity. I'm reading a great new book. I highly recommend it. It's called Magic Words by Jonah Berger. In fact, I just reached out to him yesterday and invited him to be a guest on my show because I just love his work. But he talks about identity, that we can attach identity to a word just by simply adding ER. It's like, do not lie. No, do not be a liar is far more powerful. So just little kind of twists of semantics, it almost seems, but truly when you become or adopt an identity of somebody, like say, for example, you're looking forward to becoming an investor. Well, adopt the identity of an investor today. And you may not have achieved the first investment yet, but you're looking forward to it and you're living in the present as though you're already there by your identity, by your actions, by your behaviors. Because what would an investor do? Would an investor go lease that brand new vehicle with zero payback and zero return? Or would an investor make this choice relative to a vehicle? Or would an investor choose to save this but spend and invest over there? So there's just ways to kind of game the system, if you will, still setting goals and looking forward, but don't live there. And that's one of the characters that came to me in this dark time, was a character that really literally spoke to me and said, you're living in a distant future. You need to deal with the present. Yes, set the goal, plan to climb to the peak, but don't live there yet. You've got to live right here in the present, and you better enjoy it. It's like the person who really wants to lose a lot of weight, but hates themselves now. Well, they just probably will A, never achieve the goal, or B, even when you do, still not be happy with yourself, never happy, and then boom, boomerang right back to where you were. Right. And again, to your point about living in the past where, oh, those were the days, my God, that's when life was good in America. Oh man, right. when I used to, or I can't, I failed so hard, I just can't escape my own shadow of that late afternoon where I fell down.
Right. Yeah, it's not just the football hero who's like remembering the good old days. It's people who are living in past trauma and can't get beyond that as well. I'm a victim.
Like you and me who were on the bench.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm never going to be nothing because I never got called up from the third string kind of thing, And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, and I have bounced back and forth occasionally between both those things, getting locked into a long-term daydream of this is what my goal is, never really putting pen to paper to say, okay, if that's my goal, how do I get there? It's just like, it's easier to live in the dream than it is to actually work for the dream. And I've been times when I was like, oh, if only I would have invested in Apple or something, back in the day, if only I had thrown some money at that Bitcoin, if only I had, living back in the regrets and everything else. And all you got to do again is learn from those things and then keep your eye on the future while enjoying. And that's what you were talking about it too. These people who are like so consumed by the destination, they never enjoy the parts of the journey that are enjoyable. You've got to find joy in the doing as well as the achieving.
And careful not to borrow, because people will lend you their story. People will lend you their failures. People will lend you their fears. And you have to be careful not to borrow that. We see this a lot in real estate. Oh, my uncle had a triplex one time. Oh, man, awful experience. In fact, he lost it in foreclosure, or the tenants were awful and started, they were dealing horse. Michael, that's a euphemism for heroin, just so you know.
Yeah.
Smack,
I know.
I know. Say today.
I know.
But you could borrow that experience from your uncle, who means well when he's sharing it with you, means well to provide guidance and look what I went through. Don't walk through the same trials and tribulations and fire that I've been through, kid, just avoid it. And suddenly you're borrowing that identity or that story or of his past or her past, and not recognizing that you can learn from their experience without having to either adopt their fears and their exact experience and just learn from it and move forward into your own walk of life. Because you're going to make we all learn best by making our own mistakes, of course, but it's nice to avoid some by learning from history, or you would be doomed to repeat it.
I always remember that old phrase that, experience is the best teacher, but they never finish it, because the end of that is, especially when it's somebody else's experience. If I see the guy put his hand on the hot stove, I know not to put my hand on the hot stove. Right. I mean, that's just and I don't need to go, well, I've got to learn for myself. Oh, God, that is hot. I don't need to.
But the admonition is careful not to assume that identity. Take the information from their experience, but don't assume their identity is, so I'll never invest. Oh, I'll never run.
Well,
my uncle's cousin's brother had a heart attack when he ran. I'm not doing that.
I would never assume their identity, because how stupid would you have to be to put your hand on a hot stove? Okay. I mean, come on, seriously. But it's a perfect example of what you're talking about. All right. So break it down for me like I'm 5. If I want to take these 3 L's and put them in my life, maybe I'm stuck on the daydreamer phase. Maybe I'm stuck on the high school footballer phase of the yesteryear parade. How do I do that? How do I focus? How do I bring those things together? Give it to me.
I told you once before, well, many times, I've talked about journaling, but I also told you once before, I have custom journals printed just for me, and once in a while I'll give them away, but they're just for me. They're blank pages, no lines, so I can draw, I can write big, small, there's nothing constraining me, and it's my logo, it's my design on the cover, it's my journey, it's my story. I write in it every day. One of the things I write about is where I'm going. One of the things I'll remind myself is that I'm headed towards, with my radio syndication, 150 radio stations. However, Michael, you know this, I put everything I've got into each show I'm doing, no matter who signs up. So I'm looking forward, but I'm living right here in the present, because I owe it to each and every individual listener today, not just wait till Des Moines signs up. Why? No, I'm pouring into it right now here today, even though I'm looking forward, and I write about that. Learning from the past. I don't spend as much time there, but I'll find myself saying something or into a thought loop, and I'll go, wait a minute, I've been here before. Okay. And I'll reflect on that. I don't spend a lot of time there, but I'll reflect on it. The other way I learn from the past is I love biographies. I love to read Charles Ponzi, the namesake of all schemes going forward, pyramid schemes like that. Charles Ponzi had an amazing life and an intriguing, desperate, awful, horrible life with moments of glimmer and hope in it. I love reading it. I love reading his past, reading about Walt Disney choking out an owl. I can't stop talking about that.
Stop it.
But I love reading biography. That's a great way to learn from the past, including your own, and talking to family members, talking to people that have been down the road that you want to go, and learning from it, but not adopting their identity, and then reminding myself to live in the present. And I literally will write that. I also have a coin minted that reminds me of all 3 of these philosophies, and I keep that coin in my pocket every single day. And I'll give them away once in a while, but for the most part, I made that for me, and I just remind myself every day of these 3 things that are so important. So goal setting, remembering what you've learned, and remembering that the good life is to be present. Don't live for the moment, but live in the moment. Because if you live for the moment, you're not going to be able to achieve what you want to into the future. But if you live in the moment, in this present time, like right here, right now, all that matters to me, and I'm here with you because this is the present.
Chris Story, the man from Homer, ilovehomeralaska.com is his website. He's the author of several books, including The Backyard Millionaire, Making of Man, and of course, Born to Live, which you said doesn't sell hardly any copies.
Nope.
Where can folks find Born to Live if they want to read this story?
ilovehomeralaska.com, Amazon, wherever books are sold. It's published wide, and it's ebook and paperback.
Okay, and one day an audiobook when I get off my rusty dusty and actually finish it. I got it halfway done. I just never fit. It's, you know how it is. Chris Story, I appreciate that. The man from Homer, again, ilovehomeralaska.com. Go pick up his book, The Born to Live, if you want to learn more about the 3 L's in life. Thank you, Mr. Story. We appreciate you coming on board today and sticking around with us.
Thank you, Michael.
Folks, we're out of time for this segment. We got one more coming up. Got no idea what I'm going to talk about. Maybe we'll do phone lines. Maybe somebody in the chat room will say something, or maybe I'll just keep riffing on what Chris just laid at our feet, which is good stuff. Good stuff. We'll be back with more. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of two
entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, Chris Story, our guest, still here on the program. He's stuck with us because that's the kind of guy he is. He sticks with you no matter where it's like gum on the shoe. You can't get rid of it. Mr. Story, anything else that they will learn for Born to Live? I would love to see a couple copies come off your shelf and folks come on and give us a good book review of Born to Live. I think that would be a fun thing to do. Anything else we're going to we're going to learn about that from Born to Live?
Well, there's actually a number of characters. I've had, of the people that have read it, it's been probably the most impactful communications back to me. I mean, other than, people got a thrill out of The Making of Man. It's kind of a thrilling little read. And Backyard Millionaire is definitely, I've had people say to me, I'm changing my investment strategies. I'm moving forward. I've always wanted to do this. And I've got a lot of great feedback and tremendous sales. It's the ones, though, from Born to Live who say I cried all the way through. I couldn't put it down. You can read it in 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. And one particular guy, and he's a listener of yours, read it just before he went into an open heart surgery and said it was an incredible, I forget his words exactly, but a hope and inspiration as he went into that pretty desperate time and where somebody's incredibly alone. But these 3 characters that come to, well, there's probably a half a dozen characters, and I love each and every one of them. And they're just, I don't know, it's a really great little story. But I think I like to send it to people that I think are in a moment in time where they really could use it, and they really need a message of hope and finding purpose and recognizing what is the good life, and when's the last time you thought about what it would be to live a good life.
Born to Live. You can find it at ilovehomeralaska.com. Any commentary on the madness in the legislature before I let you go, now that you've pumped us up? Anything else you want to share with us, or any other thoughts? I don't want to direct you too much. Go ahead.
Only that I appreciate you, having Brad on to dissect what's happening in the legislature. I may not agree with his solutions. I don't care for his tax ideas relative to the residents, but I do appreciate that you expose what is happening. It's a little bit like standing in that x-ray machine where you put your hands above your head and put your feet apart, and you guys are going through what's happening. The other thing is I stay in touch with my representative, not my senator, because his name is Gary Stevens and he lives on an island far from the main people he represents. But I stay in touch with my representative constantly throughout the session. I encourage everybody to. They're our neighbors. They're our friends. Talk to them.
Well,
talk to them like real people, not just editorials.
Yeah, no, don't grow weary in well-doing. Keep in contact and keep telling them what you think. That's the important part for sure. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Mr. Story, thank you for coming on board. I appreciate it. It's good to talk with you, my friend. We will see you next week.
All right. Keep it up, Michael. Take care.
Thanks for coming on board. We really appreciate it. Chris Story, the man from Homer, here on the program. We appreciate him being part of it and coming on board and joining us as usual. All right, final segment for today here on the program. I don't know. What do you guys want to talk about? What do we got? 3 minutes here? What do you guys want to talk about? Should we keep harping on the legislature? Should we talk more about the 3 L's? Should we talk about, I don't know, movies, football? I don't know anything about football. Whatever. You guide me. Why not? Go ahead. Throw it up in the chat room. Tell me what you want to talk about. I'll riff on anything for 10 minutes, 9 minutes, whatever it is for the next segment. I'd be happy to talk about those things. Feel free to jump on board and be part of it with us. One thing I do, you know what? I'm going to reach for the stars here in the near future. I'm trying to figure out how to get a hold of Jordan Peterson because he had an interview with John Stossel recently, and it was intense. It was interesting. It was, such a brain exploding moment for me in watching the part of the interview. And I only got a little chunk of it. I got to go back and watch the whole thing. I got a little snippet of it and I got to go find it now. But I'm working on maybe getting Jordan Peterson on the program if possible. I mean, this guy is, that's like asking, I don't know, Beyonce to be on the program or Trump or somebody that's so far out of my little radio show league that I just don't know. But I'm going to try to see if we can get him on for a few minutes to talk about things because, I've been following Peterson for quite a while and he has got, some very, he's got some ideas that people would consider radical and he's got, but again, it resonates with me, a lot of the things that he talks about. And this thing with Stossel, this one little piece that I got with Stossel was so amazing that I would like to do a whole show about it. I would like to, or Coleon Noir, right? Yeah, trying to get Coleon Noir on the program or BJ Campbell from Hand Waving Freakoutery. Anyway, I don't know. It's I'm not ready to quite talk about it yet, but maybe it's something I can do in a future show. We'll jump into that. I'm out of time. We're gonna make it up as we go along. That's how we do it around here. Here we go. The Michael Dukes Show, Common Sense Radio. Well, hello and welcome back to the program. I did, Brian. Just answering questions in the chat room here in the commercial break. We finished up with Chris' story, and I appreciate him coming in. Again, it's interesting to see from a perspective, as a radio host, to be able to have some kind of metric to see how people are listening to certain things. And I've talked about this before, but I'll since it struck me this morning, when we were finishing up with Brad, we had about 70 people watching on the simulcast, right? And as we transitioned from Brad over to Chris' story, which really happened in about 30 seconds because Brad got off, I brought Chris on, and we came right back. It was, not much time. And it was interesting to watch those numbers tick backwards. And to the point to where we came from about 70 down to about 30, 38, 39 people watching the simulcast when Chris was on. And I find that a fascinating commentary on people in general, my listeners specifically, but people in general overall. Brad was talking about things that people get upset about. A lot of people in the chat room disagree with it. Even Chris said in the commercial break there, I asked him for his final thoughts on the legislature, and he's like, he appreciates Brad coming on, even though he disagrees with Brad on a bunch of things, including the whole taxation thing, right? And so he, it's Brad's commentary is it's not divisive, but it does raise some flags and it gets people's ire up and things like that. And it's interesting to watch how things like that, things that are in some ways combative. I mean, like Mike Shower, we get Mike Shower on, and we could have 80, 90, 100 people watching the simulcast. We get Chris Story on, which is not as combative, not as, I guess you would consider to be classically negative, and something that's more of the positive spin, and, half the audience goes away. And I don't know if this is indicative of what's happening on terrestrial radio. I mean, there's thousands of people who are listening right now on terrestrial radio. So I don't know if when Chris comes on, they just tune out or switch the station or whatever. I mean, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I bring Chris on for me. He's on this for me as much as for more than for any of you. Because I know that, in the world that I live in, and I live in the world of politics and commentary and things like that, it could be tough. It could be depressing. It can be frustrating. I mean, for those of you who are listening and just listen for the show and then go about your merry way for the rest of the day and don't really think about those things, I'm thinking about this all day, every day. I'm always thinking about who's the next guest, what's the next topic, what should we, what tactic should we talk about, or what part of it. And so I'm living in this in so many ways. It's one of the reasons why, quite honestly, I pulled back from the national stuff, is because I was growing. Oh, I was so angry. I was an angry man. I mean, you ask my wife, 15 years ago, when 15 years ago, where I was still focusing on a lot of national stuff, and I was I was frustrated and angry, and that's when I basically decided to stop watching the news channels. I would go out and seek out the news when I wanted to, instead of having it force fed to me, and I started really shying away from most of the national stuff, because I came to the realization that we can't really affect that stuff. The state stuff I can. But even with the state stuff, it's an exercise in frustration, right? Some would say an exercise in futility to try and fight these things, which is why I've commonly been saying don't grow weary in well-doing. Just because it's frustrating and things, you can't stop doing it just because it's hard. It's hard. But that's why I bring Chris on, to try and bring back some of that balance to my life and some center. But it's interesting to me to watch, different. I don't think if there was a good news talk show where all they did all day long was talk about the good news, right? I don't think it would have much of a listenership. I mean, as much as I would enjoy listening to it, I don't think that overall it would have much of a listenership, because we are drawn as human beings to conflict, right? I mean, isn't that at the heart of any good story? At the heart of any good story is conflict. I mean, that's what, this is a bad example, but that's why, like, reality TV. That's why reality TV would be some of the most boring stuff in the world if they didn't make it more, quote unquote, real by injecting some kind of conflict into the story. And, and of course the old, if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing, and everything else. We are, in some ways, we're just slaves to our human nature in that regard, to where we may want to hear some good stuff sometimes, but mostly I don't know if we want to be mad, but boy, we sure are good at it. We sure are good at it. So anyway, I guess that is, that's just one of those things that I was thinking about, that if, I would love to have, and Chris is working on his own show right now. He has his own radio show already down on the peninsula, but he's working on syndicating a weekly radio show called The Backyard Millionaire, that deals with a lot of these things, with positivity and with real estate and things like that. And I hope he does very, very well with it, because that we need more of that kind of positivity in our lives. We need more of a positive. Maybe we couldn't take 5 days a week, 2 hours or 3 hours a day of it, but I mean, 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week? Sure. I think we could deal with that. I think we need to consciously seek more of that out. I've been trying lately in some of the things to bring in different guests and talk about different things, whether it was yesterday with Emma Camp or Mark Cameron, the Alaskan author who writes for the Tom Clancy estate, or the Alaskan blonde author, and just all these different. I'm trying to bring in some more things that are not necessarily negative or combative, I guess, in the ways that because I think we need that. We need to find more of that balance. I'm trying to find a balance on the show of those kind of things as well. I still want to keep you informed. I want to keep you, enlightened, but I also want to, keep you entertained. I want to keep you educated and entertained, and to help you get your mind right, which is, again, why I bring Chris on. And quite honestly, I get a little disappointed when I see everybody drop off when Chris comes on and starts talking about the 3 L's to life, or getting your brain right, or setting your goals, or doing whatever it is. Because sometimes I think, I wonder if those are the people that need to hear what Chris is saying today, that they're missing that opportunity because it's just, I don't know, it's not their thing, or I wonder about that. I'd love to see more people be happier and be, satisfied and be happy on the journey of where they're going, and to learn about these kind of things and goal settings and everything. But anyway, it has been good. And several people in the chat room now have said that they too have stopped watching the news for many reasons. Mental health improvement and everything. And I'll be honest with you, yes, if I want to go out and find that stuff, I can go out to CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or Newsmax or wherever, and I can watch just as many videos or read as many articles as I want, but it's not just being like forced into me all the time. That was so frustrating. I'm so glad. It was one of the first things that I did, and I felt so much better within just a couple weeks of not being constantly slammed with that stuff. And Jim might have it as well. Jim says, I like my good news in measured doses. Otherwise, I get lazy. Maybe that's it. Maybe we just can't accept too much good news. Maybe because it doesn't match up with our life. Maybe we're looking for conflict and other things because we're unhappy with our life, and we're looking to make sure we're not the only ones. I don't know. I don't know what the psychology is behind it. But anyway, I love bringing Chris on, and I hope more of you will check it out. Check out his book, Born to Live, at ilovehomeralaska.com. I suppose I need to finish the audiobook now. I feel bad about that. I got waylaid on another project, and it dropped by the wayside. So anyway, okay, well, we're out of time for today, my friends. Tomorrow's Wednesday. I'm hoping we're going to have Mike Shower on, maybe somebody else. I'm working on some other stuff. Be kind, love one another, live well. I don't know where any of that came from, but I've been thinking about that. I've just kind of stream of consciousness there, because it disappoints me to watch it drop off. When Chris, I'm looking at the little number on the top of the screen, and I could see how many people are watching, and then I just watch it go tick, 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 tick. And I'm like, man, I wish more people were listening to get the good stuff, right? You could lead a horse to water, but I guess you can't make them drink. That's the whole thing. Yeah, people who have, CNN or Fox or Newsmax, or just that's all they have on 24 hours a day. I've met some of these people, some of the unhappiest people I've ever met. Doesn't matter what their political persuasion is, they are unhappy. And it's, to me, it's a thing. I can see it. Definitely. All right, my friends. We appreciate you. We appreciate you coming on board. We appreciate you being here every day. I'm trying to do something to bring you in and bring you something new every day. That's all I can do. The Michael Dukes Show, Common Sense Radio. We will see you tomorrow.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Dukes Show.